then Minister Gayton Mckenzie announced a bid committee just last month, indicating a strong step in the quest to bring the prestigious race to South Africa. So Kyalami Race Track, the only race circuit to have previously hosted a Formula One race in the country, is yet to be FIA Grade 1 certified, while the bid process is also yet to officially commence. So what steps will need to be followed now, and how close is South Africa in reality to hosting the prestigious racing event? Well, joining us to unpack some of those questions is Formula One and automotive creator at Heart of Motion, Matthew Kanniah, who joins me in studio as we look ahead to what promises to be an exciting time for South Africa, Matthew. But thank you so much for joining me on the AM Report. We talk about it, excitement, jubilation when people heard that there's a potential of the race coming to South Africa. But how feasible is it? How far are we from realizing the dream?
Well, good morning and thanks for having me, and good morning to your listeners. I think it's a very exciting time to be a South African because we're very close. I think we're a lot closer than what people think. It was just necessary to have some of the small steps to be put in place, but we're very, very close, especially with Gayton Mckenzie putting together the bid steering committee. That definitely takes us a step closer to having a race back in African soil.
Now, of course, the obvious venue or location for hosting a race in South Africa, many would think is Kyalami, because it's hosted a Formula One race before back in 1993. But not currently FIA Grade 1 certified. What would they need to do to ensure that that becomes a reality? And perhaps, are there other possibilities for South Africa, or are we only looking at having a race circuit?
That's a great question. So currently Kyalami is Grade 2 certified, which means it can host everything except for Formula One and World Superbike Challenge. But there is measures being put into place. Kyalami has committed to giving it Grade 1 status. So during the course of this year and next, they're working with Apex Circuit Design, which is a world-class circuit design circuit, and they're looking at spending close to 177 million, if not more. So it's only a little bit of steps, because when they worked with those circuit designers, they said, our circuit is so world-class, it only needs few upgrades. And it's those final touches that'll get it to F1 Grade 1 status, and it's really not far, because it is going to be done this year, and we will be able to see those upgrades. So even if we don't have a race, we still have a world-class circuit to host other things.
Talk me through the various role players, perhaps Apex that you've mentioned, the race promoter, and of course, the owners at Kyalami, the fenters as well, in terms of the roles that they're expected to play then in this process as they look towards, completing that circuit.
Yeah, so Kyalami Grand Prix Circuit is its own business, so it has to run separately as opposed to just doing something for Formula One. So with them spending the money with Apex, they would have to go to an external person to say, look at our circuit and let's have a look at what sort of upgrades we can do. Apart from that, they can then see, apart from Formula One, what else can we host that can be feasible for motorsport races in the future. So there's small things that can be done that can host a greater feature for us to host races.
Are we not getting ahead of ourselves a bit? Because of course, if you're looking at Formula One, we have, your track circuit, your race circuit, and you also have street circuits. So in the event that South Africa or the FIA was to say, well, we actually want a street race, do we have options in South Africa for that possibility? Yes,
anything is possible. If we look back at the World Cup in 2010, as soon as we got the go-ahead for that, it was just put into place and we were ready to host. So whether it is street circuit or normal traditional circuit, it definitely can be possible. But at the moment, our facilities and infrastructure allow us to have it, because Kyalami has historic history, and that is the natural place for a race to happen. If it happens to be a street circuit, there'd have to be some further upgrades for the city and infrastructure, and that's for government to help with. But at the moment, it's more than 70% ready for us to have it at Kyalami.
Now, if we are to look at the possibilities, of course, the starting of the process with the bid steering committee gives the impression that there will be various bids being submitted. We've heard potentially Cape Town, Wakanda City, another that's been mentioned. If you're looking at what would be the most suitable, looking at a country like South Africa and looking at the races in the F1 calendar, where would you be looking?
So as Gayton said, it doesn't have to be South Africa that does it. I know that Rwanda is in the bid, so we don't just have to have one specific country in Africa to have it, multiple can have it. And the great thing about it is that whether it's street or normal circuit, it definitely can happen, because, with the bid steering committee, their job is to make sure that everything is put into place. Can we have tourism? Can we have fan parks? Is there accessibility? Can the fans get there? Is there policing? Small things that put together in a document that's submitted to the FIA. Once it's with them, they can tick all the boxes and say, yes, we are definitely ready, and this country is ready. And then it's for their discretion to decide if Africa or multiple African countries can host it.
I'm loving how you're expanding it to Africa. So there's Rwanda, there's Morocco as the other potential bids here. What would be the considerations, and how important is government buy-in? Because we've seen with Rwanda, Paul Kagame, of course, taking ownership perhaps of that bid and looking to get it over the line. How important would that be for South Africa? And perhaps what would be the key considerations if you're looking at a Morocco, Rwanda and South Africa to see which country in Africa will be the first to host the race?
I think in general what we should look at is in the African space we don't have an African race. Everywhere is in Europe and the Americans in Asia, but Africa is key missing. And when you call it a world motorsport, you have to consider Africa, which is a vital step. So I think in our bidding process, what's key is that we should work with other governments in other countries so that if another country does get it, we're closer to also hosting an additional race. So should South Africa get it, we would also be in the position to help Rwanda to get it, because the more African countries we have, the more better it looks for all of us.
Well, it does sound like exciting times, but the finances always become the next question that people ask. So we have timelines roughly, but Minister Gayton Mckenzie was speaking around to the tune of around 2 billion rand a year if we are to host the race here. How does the funding model work? Where does the money come from to ensure that that is raised?
This is a good question. So that is for the bid steering committee. So there's a 13-person chairman. So what they'll do is they'll look at all the various stakeholders and privateers who want to chip in. And the important thing is when they do work with Formula One, it's an important step of hosting a race here, which is making sure that local vendors, up to 60% of the suppliers, and this is simple things such as cleaning up the track when all the people have left, and people who are track marshals and also food vendors. It has to be put into place that most of the South African suppliers are used instead of international, because you want to stimulate and grow the economy. So it's working with various stakeholders to come through with a collective number. And once they've got the number to host and to make sure that they can be there at the same time to also stimulate growth for their businesses, then a number is produced. So it is very high, but the thing is with tourism and with the attraction of Formula One coming here, the economy can grow and you can make that money back quite instantly, especially with F1 committing to not just having 1 year, it'll be a multiple race deal.
And it might be good news for South Africans as well, because you mentioned the 2010 FIFA World Cup and perhaps some people who got opportunities for jobs and the likes.
Yeah.
If you're looking at what benefit could come for South Africans, the ordinary South African on the street, perhaps who's not a fan of Formula One, what would this mean for them if such a prestigious race was to come into the country?
It's a huge thing. Already we're seeing a ton of people get into the sport, and this is one of the things that the bid steering committee has to do, which is fan parks. Not everyone will have access to the races on the weekend, but fan parks in various parts of the city allow people to connect with it. And with social media, we're seeing TV shows on stream services where you're able to watch it. We also just had a fantastic show run here with Red Bull that actually showed the power of Formula One, and that showed more than 20,000 people who were so eager to see it. They climbed onto the roofs of buildings nearby just to have a glimpse of it. And that showed that there's so much eagerness ready for it. And I think even if you aren't a fan of the sport, if something world-class like that comes here, you're definitely going to be able to try, watch it, or try go to a fan park to see it. Okay,
well, I want to ask then, hypothetically, if you're in the bid committee now and you're looking at the key priority areas here, there's a target set perhaps for 2027, 28 to realize all of this. What would be the key focus areas now to get things off the ground as quickly as possible and to make sure that things are on track to hit that timeline that's been set?
So as I said earlier, with Kyalami being a separate business, they have now committed to doing those costs to upgrade the circuit. Once that's done in place, which they said will take place during the course of 2025 and 26 without any circuit disruption and any events, they now have the key factor to take that for their bid steering committee and say, we have the circuit that's ready. It's next up to government to say, we have infrastructure, we've got policing, we've got ambulancing, and it's also up to the image of the country, because we also want to show the rest of the world that it's not just dangerous, it's not full of lions, it's not a crazy place to be. We're seeing an influx of celebrities at the moment coming to South Africa, and they're being shocked and changed to see that it's not just a barren city, it's actually very world class. So to even consider us as a third world country is quite a shock to many, because we're actually a lot further than people think.
Exciting times ahead for that bid. I want to step away from that for a second and look to the upcoming season. Lewis Hamilton joining Ferrari, Checo going out of favor with Red Bull. How do you see it unfolding? Is Red Bull going to be challenged a bit more this season? Are we going to see new players, or how do you see this Formula One season unfolding for you?
I think the 2025 season is going to be one of the most exciting. It's also one of the last seasons for the current regulation of car, because in 2026, there's new players like Audi that are joining. So for this season, it's going to be all or nothing. Lewis has now joined Ferrari, which is his shot to get his 8th title, which is important for him before everything changes. And Red Bull definitely has some strong dominance. Look, they've got 4 in a row for Max Verstappen, which is incredible. And even though we've missed out on constructors, there's definitely a chance because this is the all-or-nothing season, which means that not just Red Bull, it's going to be McLaren and all the other players, especially with the amount of driver swaps that's happened. It's all or nothing to get as much points and championship points that you need for this season before everything resets to 0 again.
Oh, Matthew, thank you so much for your time. It should be an exciting season. Then winds of change in Formula One. McLaren got Constructors' Championship and, of course, Lewis Hamilton moving to Ferrari.